We're done with spring and looking ahead to the 2023 season, but we want to fully put a bow on what we saw during UF's 15 spring practices, so we brought back a familiar face to talk about it. You guys loved having Dave Waters from Gators Breakdown on, so we decided to bring him back to talk about the biggest storylines throughout the spring. So let's jump right into it. Dave, thanks for joining me. Let's start with a position that everybody's been talking about the last couple of days, wide receiver position. We saw an exit there with Xavier Henderson. What are your thoughts on him hitting the transfer portal?
Allie, we've kind of waited for Henderson to have that breakout season, and he never really broke out. He was a highly rated four-star recruit at the wide receiver position, and at the time when he was recruited, Florida needed those type of receivers, but he just never really materialized into that recruiting profile that he had coming in. So. You'll miss his experience. You'll miss what he brought to the table as far as that goes. But Florida's really high on these true freshmen that they're bringing in, and bringing in one more in the fall as well with Eugene Wilson. So between Marcus Burke having a good spring game, Caleb Douglas also as well. I don't think that. Since he never really broke out the production numbers, and when you go and look at it, it won't be really hard to replicate now. Is there really going to be any separation in this receiver group? I don't know if there would have been separation with him. I don't know if there's going to be separation without him. I think the ideal situation for Florida is you just have a bunch of good receivers. Ricky Pearsall is the number one. He probably will be the best guy on the field, but behind him, there might just be a group of receivers. You may not have a true. I mean, Ricky Pearsall is not your true outside number one, but he's the Gators' number one receiver no matter where he lines up. But you may not have a clear 2, 3, 4, 5. It may just be a group of guys, and depending on matchups, depending on what a defense throws at them, it may be a different second guy week in and week out for the Gators.
You mentioned Caleb Douglas, and there was a lot of guys, young guys, that really got some good play this spring. Tell me what you thought about the freshmen that came in, the young guys, and who really impressed you there.
Yeah, I mean, Aiden Mizell did this show in that spring game. They tried to get him the ball down the field to use that speed that he's known for, just not able to connect. And Andy Jean probably showed a little more physicality than I think we thought he may have at the receiver spot. So a well-rounded young group of receivers. You hope now, Allie, how I look at it, I've been thinking a lot about it the last couple of days because quarterback's been a hot topic too. For Florida, I was like, well, Henderson leaving in the end might be pretty good for 2024 Florida because whoever the quarterback is next season, at least these receivers that they're relying on in 23 are not going to be new at the same time a quarterback is going to be new. So while 2023 Henderson, I don't think there's a big effect, but it could really help Florida down the road as these young receivers get the reps in 2023.
Yeah, there'll be some more game experience to go around. But, the wide receivers can only be so good as the offensive line, right? And we did see a lot of injuries happen. But who impressed you this spring?
I have to go Najee Harris. Once Micah Mazuka went down, you started hearing this true to get on the field and really competing for starting reps. And I'm not sure, he wasn't the highest graded offensive lineman Florida brought in. That went to Roderick Kearney, and he got a lot of snaps too. But it was Najee Harris who really took advantage there at that left guard spot to come in once Mazuka went down and kind of earn his way into the starting role. Played a lot in that spring game as well. So, that's probably where I'd go because I didn't think going into spring, I didn't think coming out of spring, while we talk about true freshmen, it was mostly going to be that wide receiver group. I didn't expect to talk about a true freshman along that offensive line.
Well, Florida's going to need it with the injuries. So let's move to the other side of the ball. A defense saw the departure of Powell Randall. What are your thoughts now on the outside linebacker edge position?
Yeah, this is the one that hurts the most out of the two guys that left this past weekend. And he was going to split time with Princely, but now instead of giving you two guys that you could rely on, now it's Princely and question of a Jack Pyburn coming in as a second-year player. Can he do it? Or true freshman, TJ Searcy, can he do it? Maybe in certain situations, of Scooby Williams and Manny Nunnery, true freshman Jaden Robinson, but it doesn't give you that that history that Powell Ryland put together toward the second half of last year that you can rely on. So, this one hurts, and it makes it where Princely Newman Yellen, good move for the staff to move him to edge. But behind him, it really raises the question of, what can Florida do? I think transfer portal is going to be Billy Napier pretty much said it almost every spring speaking tour he had. edge was going to be a position they were going to hit. And that was before Powell Ryland put his name into the transfer portal. So I don't know if it was some foreshadowing or if Billy Napier maybe knew this was coming along. But either way, I do think I mentioned there's not a lot of experience behind Princely, even Yellen. So I do expect Florida to really hit the transfer portal hard to give another experienced edge rush to go behind him.
What are your main takeaways from the linebacker unit as a whole? This was a group that really needed to improve from last year.
Yeah, unfortunately, Taraja Mitchell got hurt. He wasn't able to take part in spring practice, I think, as much as we wanted him to, trying to maybe take over for that vocal role Ventrell Miller was leaving behind. But that opened the door for Shamar James to get more reps. And kind of coming into spring, we didn't know Scooby Williams was going to be an edge rusher, if he was going to be an inside linebacker. And now he just took most of his reps there at inside linebacker. And then I'm excited for the youth of that group. And now, going into fall camp, what can Taraja Mitchell do as a leader? He's kind of already earned that reputation of the mouthpiece of being that vocal leader there, but he just didn't get to necessarily translate it on the field as much as we wanted him to in the spring. So I do think they're a deeper group than they were last year. I don't know if they'll. How do you replicate the experience Ventrell Miller brought to the table, the experience he brought to the table? Amari Burney having his best season as a Gator in his last season, but Shamar James, highly recruited, all SEC freshman. I don't think Florida's going to take much of a step there. It's just who's going to be that second guy they can really count on to consistently. I think there's Manny Nunnery was a really labeled all throughout spring as one of the most athletic players on the team, and he kind of showed it in the spring game as well. So he's probably the one that maybe gets overlooked a bit that may end up making some more plays than we expect.
So not only is there a lot of shakeup on the players we're going to see on the defensive side of the ball, but there was a few defensive staff moves as well. What were your overall thoughts on Austin Armstrong through the spring?
Well, everything that we heard about his mannerisms and his hype and his jovial attitude out there was on display in the spring game. He didn't need to wear an orange shirt. He would have been easily recognized and noticed jumping up and down on the sideline there. And, hey, look, I like what we saw in the spring game. Billy Napier not necessarily making him call the dogs off. There was this aggressive nature that we knew he was going to bring to the defense. And Billy Napier let him have it. Billy Napier let him, all right, you want to bring 5? You can bring 5. You want to bring 6? You can bring 6. If you want to stunt, if you want to, simulate a pressure, if you want to do all that, go right ahead. This offensive line needs the reps. His quarterback needs the rep. I'm not going to call the dogs off. And Austin Armstrong just kept it coming all night long. So I think it was good that everything that we heard throughout the spring was pretty much on display in that spring game.
So same question for Corey Raymond. He's coaching both the safeties and the cornerbacks now. So taking over the entire secondary, what did you see from him this spring? What maybe was different this spring than last spring?
Yeah, Allie, I do hope this aggressive nature kind of goes more towards, we've heard about it for this Florida defense for quite some time now, is get a little more aggressive, play tighter coverage, play more man coverage if you can, if it calls for it. And I'm hoping that's what kind of comes out of this. All throughout spring, it was a question of just could communication be better between your two corners, maybe 3 corners, and your 2 safeties back there. Now that there's one voice back there, no Patrick Toney kind of splitting up his defensive coordinator and safety roles. Now it's just Corey Raymond back there coaching the safeties, coaching the cornerbacks. And I don't think we necessarily got to see a whole lot of it in the spring game. I still have that worry about safety just because of the lack of experience there. I think transfer portals will be kind of friendly to Florida for the safety spot too. But I really do think it's going to enhance the corner spots. Jason Marshall locking down that number 1. And from all accounts, I know we were discussing Jaden Hill moving the star, but from all accounts, that was a pretty good move there for the Gators throughout the spring. That we don't get to see much, and those open practices don't get to show much. But if you talk around a lot, that was a pretty good move there for Florida in the spring that hopefully pays dividends there, so they can kind of free up some other guys in that defensive backfield.
All right, so there's no way to not ask this question. It seems like Murray leads the QB room. Obviously, nothing has been said, and probably won't be said for a while now, honestly. But how close do you really feel like the quarterback competition is?
I think it's close, but I do think it's a clear, like you said, Mertz probably being the guy. I think it's clear, but I think it's close. Could something happen in fall camp where Jack Miller wins the job because it is that close? I don't see it playing out that way either. I do think Mertz is going to be the guy, and a lot of talk about what's going to happen with Austin Simmons reclassification. Even if that happens, even if he's the quote unquote fourth quarterback, he's not going to play this year. He won't be ready. So does Florida still hit the transfer portal? Is there a guy out there who hasn't hit the portal yet that may kind of pique their interest? I don't know. I think just as it leans right now, and it's going to be Graham Mertz out there. And Allie, my whole thing about Mertz is I'm not so sure he's the quarterback that can elevate the other 10 guys around him. I think everybody else is going to have to play really good around him. And if it gets to that point, I think he can be serviceable. I mean, there are going to be points. There are going to be points in the game. There might even be a whole game or two out there where he's going to have to carry this offense. But it's going to have to be the offensive line, the running backs, the receivers that's really going to carry this offense, and him kind of just along for the ride.
Right. Now, I got to ask this morning. There was some talk about Austin Simmons, and now he's transferring to a school where his dad is an offensive coordinator there. Do you think that means that he's less likely to reclassify than maybe experts thought a week or two ago?
I would. On the surface, yeah, it makes sense that it kind of makes it a little more difficult there. Why would you transfer if your whole plan is to reclassify anyway? So I don't get it. But asking around, I mean, some people say it's still in the cards for him to reclassify. So maybe this is
get one more spring in or something, and then
that, or maybe a just-in-case measure. Just because he's homeschooled and credits and all that kind of stuff that kind of comes into the formula as well. And I'm probably lean as maybe a just-in-case scenario, but I do think it makes it more likely than before that he just stays in that class of 25.
Yeah. Tell everybody where they can find your work and follow your content.
Yeah, Ellie, everybody can get it at newsforjacks.com/Gators Breakdown, YouTube, of course, as well. All the podcast platforms out there. And hey, next time you got to come on Gators Breakdown. We'll get that set up and have a good time there. And actually, I didn't tell you last time, but welcome to the podcast world. I know it's taken off for you over here on this side of things, and I'm glad, as you said, we've had some behind the scenes conversations for the last few years, and I'm kind of glad to have you on board to share this side of the world with us all.
Well, I so appreciate it. You have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Dave Waters for Gators Breakdown for his time tonight. We have part 2 of this conversation coming up, in which we're going to talk about what we're really excited about and also what we're a little worried about with UF post-spring. Plus, we're going to give you some portal and recruiting perspectives too. Click subscribe if you don't want to miss it. If you want to see our conversations with JD Pickell on quarterbacks, go ahead and click right here.